This is the 9th Annual Status of Education Report. ASER 2013 is the work of over 500 organizations, educational institutions, diets and groups who have led over 30,000 volunteers to cover 550 rural districts, surveying almost 600,000 children in over 300,000 households across 16,000 villages. In 2004, the UPA government came to power and announced a 2% cess for elementary education, giving state governments the much-needed money to universalize elementary education. In 2005, we started ASER. The second term of UPA started in 2009, followed by the passage of the Right to Education Act. Almost 5 years have passed since this milestone. Terms of some state legislatures are coming to an end, while others have started a new term. India will elect a new parliament in 2014. So how far have we come? And where should we be going? Over the last 9 years, ASER has observed a substantial reduction in the proportion of out-of-school children. For 7 to 10-year-olds, the proportion dropped from 4.7% in 2006 to 2% in 2013. For 11 to 14-year-olds, there was a drop from 9% to 5% in the same period. Bihar stands out in its performance with a fall of 8 percentage points for 7 to 10-year-olds and 10 percentage points for 11 to 14-year-olds. In 2013, ASER observed midday meals being served in 87% of schools. The proportion of schools with usable water supply slowly increased to 74% in the same year. Of all schools visited in 2013, 53% had usable girls' toilets. In the previous year, this number stood at 48%. However, 31% of schools in 2013 and 27% of schools in 2012 still had girls' toilets which were not usable. ASER also observed an increase in the provision of libraries in schools visited that went up from 63% in 2010 to 77% in 2013. ASER began collecting data on household assets in 2009, when an equal percentage of people were observed living in kacha and pakka houses. In 2013, while 30% families lived in kacha houses, pakka houses increased to 44%. Over the same period, households with electrical connections went up from 68% to 78%. And households with at least one cell phone connection went up from 60% to 79%. While India has been rapidly changing in many aspects, ASER observed some key changes in the educational landscape. Enrollment of children in private schools stood at 19% in 2006, which rose to 29% in 2013. Today, over 60% children in Kerala and Manipur are enrolled in private schools. Haryana stands at 54%. Punjab, Jammu and Kashmir, Uttarakhand, Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan and Meghalaya have 40 to 50% private school enrollment. Other states have private enrollment in the range of 30 to 40%, 20 to 30%, 10 to 20% and lower. In states like Bihar, West Bengal, Odisha and Tripura, where private school enrollment is low, the proportion of government school children going for private tuitions is very high. Clearly, there is a large number of states where more than 50% children receive private inputs in education. In another group, 35 to 50% receive private inputs. Education planning has traditionally focused on government schools in rural areas. This new element of large private school enrollment must be considered in future plans. ASER's biggest concern has been learning levels of children. These simple testing tools are used for one-on-one oral assessment of children. The proportion of children in Standard 5 who can read this Standard 2 level text remains virtually the same at 47% in 2013. However, this proportion decreased each year from 2009 to 2012. For children in government schools, 50% could read this text in 2009, which declined by 9 percentage points in 2012. Over the same period, the proportion of private school Standard 5 readers remained unchanged. For children in Standard 3 who were able to read this Standard 1 level paragraph, there was a slight rise from 39% in 2012 to 40% in 2013. Prior to this, a steady decline was observed. The breakup between private and government school-going children shows that improvements were largely coming from private schools. Children are still struggling with basic math. The proportion of children in Standard 5 who could solve this 3-digit division sum remains at 25% in 2013. However, between 2009 and 2012, there was a drastic fall of 13 percentage points. The fall was observed to be higher for children in government schools than those going to private schools. For children in Standard 3 being able to solve this subtraction sum, a steady decline is noticed since 2009, which remains more prominent for children in government schools. The proportion of children who cannot read even alphabets in Standard 1 is increasing in government schools, while it remains low and stable in private schools. This weakness at the base will affect reading in later years and cause an increasing gap between children going to private schools and those going to government schools. A child who entered Standard 1 in a government school in 2009 is now in Standard 5. There is a 41% chance that he or she can read a Standard 2 text or more today. However, if this child were in a private school, there is a 63% chance of being a story reader. Clearly, learning achievements were neglected for much of the last decade. But there is some good news. The Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan has taken the 12th plan forward and is asking states to focus on learning levels. While education is a concurrent subject of the state and the Indian Union, there has been a lack of political leadership in improving the quality of education in India at both levels except in a few states. With new legislative assemblies and a new parliament in 2014, we hope that there will be more resolute action to rapidly and tangibly improve the quality of learning in our schools.